The 17th century was for Gdańsk a Hanseatic city called the Diamond in the Crown, a time of economic, cultural and intellectual development. Biblioteka Senatus Gedanensis, Library of Gdańsk Council and Gymnasium Gedanense, the institutions existing in the city at that time, promoted establishing the intellectual community. Learned Gdańsk citizens devoted themselves to scholarly activities. Johannes Heweliusz, a famous European astronomer-to-be, was born on January 28, 1611, to a well-educated Gdańsk family of prosperous brewers. Heweliusz was baptized in St. John's Church, located in the neighborhood of his family's house. Since his earliest childhood, Heweliusz revealed an exceptional talent in many areas, and in 1618 he entered Gymnasium Gedanense, a renowned school in Gdańsk. Heweliusz began his studies in astronomy under the tutelage of Peter Kruger, who had a tremendous influence on both Heweliusz's intellectual development and the choices the astronomer made later on in his life. Kruger, as an inspirational teacher, transmitted his interest in astronomy to Heweliusz, and at the end of his life, he obliged Heweliusz to devote himself to astronomy. Heweliusz's name was recorded in history not only as a famous astronomer whose accurate observations of astronomical phenomena were admired all over the then Europe. As the only son of his parents, Heweliusz was supposed to take over the family brewery business. Apart from that, Heweliusz became an honorary magistrate and a city councillor as well. Last but not least, what must also be remembered is the astronomer's exceptional gift for constructing instruments, grinding lenses for telescopes, constructing clocks and preparing engravings for the books he published. Heweliusz was the author of the prototype of a periscope called by Heweliusz himself a polemoscope. Heweliusz was lucky with women. The astronomer was married twice. His first wife was a daughter of a wealthy Gdańsk citizen, Katarina Rebeszka, who received a brewery and 2 houses in Gdańsk as part of her dowry. Thanks to her flair for business, Katarina took over much of the work associated with the brewery so that Heweliusz could devote himself to astronomy. In 1663, a year after Heweliusz's first wife's death, the astronomer married Elisabetha Kopman. Despite the fact that Elisabetha was much younger, she and Heweliusz made a successful marriage. Elisabetha was deeply interested in astronomy. She contributed to Heweliusz's work in a number of ways, for example, assisting Heweliusz with observations and seeing to the publication of Heweliusz's last works. Thanks to a great number of his works on astronomy, Heweliusz won fame and interest of monarchs all across Europe. Louis XIV of France and John III Sobieski of Poland were the astronomer's patrons. Many renowned astronomers as well as Polish royalty paid visits to the observatory, Heweliusz built across the roofs of 3 houses. The observatory was considered to be the most impressive and technologically advanced at that time. It was visited by the Polish King John II Casimir and his wife Marie-Louise Gonzaga, as well as by John III Sobieski, among others. Heweliusz was interested in all kinds of astronomical objects. He observed planets, comets, fixed stars, the sun and the moon. Heweliusz published the results of his observations in separate reports, research magazine articles, and in books. Heweliusz did not publish his works anywhere outside Gdańsk. Some books by the astronomer were printed in his own printing house, as he was given the privilege to print from King John II Casimir. They were bound in a tasteful way and included a great number of artistic engravings by Heweliusz himself, as well as by other renowned Gdańsk artists. The most significant works, Selenographia and Prodromus Astronomiae, included beautiful frontispieces. As early as in 1647, Heweliusz gained a success and esteem all across Europe, bringing out his first recognized work, Selenographia, dedicated to King Władysław IV, Vasa of Poland. In this work, Heweliusz inserted a number of precise and artistic maps of lunar topography. The Gdańsk astronomer continued his observations of the moon, publishing the outcome of his research in Observatio Eclipseos Lunae Instituta Gedanii. In the same year, in 1647, Heweliusz published his observations of Jupiter in the form of an ephemeral print. At the beginning of the 1650s, Heweliusz became interested in examining the nature of the sun and devoted to the topic a few of his works: Eclipsis Solis Observata Gedanii, Illustrissimis Viris Petro Gasendo et Ismael Pulialdo de Eclipse Solari, and Observatio Eclipseos Solaris Gedanii. In 1654, Heweliusz published another work in the form of a collection of 2 research letters: Epistole Duo, prior, de motu luna libratorio, posterior, de utriusque luminaris defectu, in which he inserted his observations of the moon. The former letter is devoted to the librations of the moon, and the latter one touches upon lunar eclipses. In the same year, Heweliusz published Epistole Quatuor, prior, de observatione deliqui solis, posterior, de eclipsi solis, tertia, de motu luna libratorio, quarta, de utriusque luminaris defectu. The third and the fourth letters are reprints of Epistole Duo. 2 first letters, in turn, contain Heweliusz's observations of the sun. All of the above-mentioned letters are dedicated to the astronomer's friends Laurentius Eichstadt, Pierre Gassendi, Ismael Bouillot, Giovanni Battista Riccioli, and Petrus Nucerius. In the works published in later years, Heweliusz focused his attention on planets. He published the results of his observations of Saturn, Mercury, and Venus in the following works: Dissertatio de nativa Saturni facie, Mercurius in sole visus Gedanii, and Venus in sole visa. In the next period, the Gdańsk astronomer concentrated upon observing the comets. The outcome of the astronomer's observations were included in a few works: Prodromus Cometicus, Descriptio Cometae, Cometographia, Epistola de Cometa, and Observatio de Cometa. Apart from the results of Heweliusz's own research, in the works the astronomer also included a survey of all the comets recorded in history, as well as his own views on the origination, nature, and motion of the comets. In the 1670s, Heweliusz published his Machina Celestis in 2 parts. The first volume, dedicated to Louis XIV, constituted a kind of a recorded testimony concerning the astronomer's work and life. Machina included a number of illustrations showing Heweliusz's astronomical observatory and the astronomer's instruments. In the second volume, dedicated to John III Sobieski, Heweliusz included the description of all his observations. Annus Climactericus, which was brought out after the fire of 1679 that destroyed the astronomers' houses and observatory, contained a continuation of the issues discussed in both parts of Machina. Prodromus Astronomiae, bound together with Catalogus Stellarum Fixarum and Firmamentum Sobiestianum, was Heweliusz's last work, published after the astronomer's death. The catalogue contains artistic maps of the northern and southern hemisphere. One can find here constellations marked out by the Gdańsk astronomer, for example, Scutum Sobiestianum. The Polish Academy of Sciences Gdańsk Library, the former Biblioteka Senatus Gedanensis, prides itself on having the collection of all of Heweliusz's works. Besides the famous collection, the Gdańsk Library houses the portrait of Johannes Hevelius by Daniel Schultz and Celestial Globe made by Johann Gabriel Doppelmayr on the basis of Heweliusz's maps from Firmamentum Sobiestianum.